Hello, everyone, and welcome back into another edition of Inquire Live at Game Day Central. Today, we are coming to you off the bye week. The Eagles are back in action in Philadelphia, where the undefeated Eagles will host the Pittsburgh Steelers in an anticipated cross state matchup. I am Eagles beat reporter for the Philadelphia Inquirer, Josh Tolentino. And as always, I am joined by my fellow beat reporter and co host of Game Day Central, EJ Smith. EJ, how was your bye week?
Bye week was great, Josh. I got the rest in. I'm ready to be back. Healed up some of those injuries that we sustained in the first half of the season, and yeah, I'm good to go. How about you, man?
It was good. You forgot to mention EJ is the proud owner of a second pup, a Ridgeback. So he's been quite busy, but we are back in action, ready to give you everything you need to know about these Eagles on Game Day Central. A quick reminder before we get started, EJ, where is the best place that our viewers can continue the conversation?
That's right, Josh. Inquirer.com/Eagles Game Day is where we kind of want to have a two-way conversation with you guys. We put our thoughts throughout the game in there, our analysis in real time. And we kind of want that to be a two-way conversation where, you guys can kind of ask us what we're thinking, or you can tell us what you're thinking. And, we can kind of have that conversation. So once again, that's Inquirer.com/Eagles Game Day that we can have that chat.
All right, EJ, as we mentioned, it is going to be a jam packed show. Here we are, week 8. These Eagles are still undefeated. I think we should start right there. What's the latest with this team? They're coming off the bye week. They're still the NFL's only undefeated team. They're obviously in first place in a very competitive NFC East division. What are your general expectations, EJ, for this team coming off the bye?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously kind of some makings of like a trap game here. I think that the Eagles have been pretty focused on the week in week out process of the year, but this is coming off the bye week. They have a short week looming after this game against the Texans on the road, no less. And yeah, I think that you know, you could see that kind of being a factor today. But I do think that the messaging from Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts about kind of taking this thing one week at a time will be put to the test for sure this week. And as you mentioned, like the NFC East is a really competitive division right now. The last time we were here, they had a huge win against the Dallas Cowboys that kept them at the top of the division. But one loss, and all of a sudden that division gets even tighter. So I think that the circumstances and the leadership and the messaging would kind of suggest that they won't take this game lightly. But we have to acknowledge that this is the type of game that teams can trip up with a little bit.
All right, EJ, we are going to go to the latest news for this team. Just a few days ago, the Eagles acquired accomplished pass rusher Robert Quinn. How do you think he gets acclimated into this Jonathan Gannon defense? Obviously, like what we mentioned, a very accomplished pass rusher, I believe, in his early 30s here in his career.
Yeah, he's one of 7 guys in the NFL with over 100 sacks. He had 18.5 sacks last season. He was
18 and a half, man. I just like that. I mean, that's an
it's unbelievable.
astounding number for sacks.
Yeah,
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
no, it's
18
no.
and a
I
half
mean,
is a
listen,
lot.
yeah. I mean, you're second team All Pro now. When a team adds a second team All Pro player, and a guy who had 18 and a half sacks, you might say, okay, well, he's going to displace one of the starters. No, he'll be the Eagles' third edge rusher off the bench. The first guy off the bench, third guy in the rotation behind Josh Sweat and Hassan Reddick. I mean, that's a good place to be in, where you have a guy who has a track record of being productive, a track record of affecting the quarterback on key downs, and that's what they're going to ask him to do. I expect him to play today. I expect him to be around that like 20, 30 snap threshold today. Fortunately, like edge rusher is one of those positions. It's not really like you have to learn the entire framework of the defense. You just need to know, okay, get to the quarterback. It can be kind of simplified, especially in the role that he'll be in, which is, again, I think he'll play on key downs, give Hassan Reddick or Josh Sweat kind of a break here and there. And, I think this is a long-term move. Over the course of the season, you want those guys playing less snaps now so that, when it gets cold out, when, the games start really mattering, those guys are a little bit more fresh. So yeah, I mean, it was a logical thing to do. I mean, a lot of it wasn't just me. A lot of people kind of pointed to him being a potential target even before the trade. And let's say the compensation I thought was a little bit less than what a lot of people were expecting. The fourth rounder, especially when you consider that he's on an expiring contract now. So yeah, it was a big addition. It'll be interesting to see if they're done or if they can try to make another move here before the deadline on November 1st.
New pass rusher Robert Quinn is active today. He will be suited up for the Eagles after the trade from the Bears. EJ, let's get back to Nick Sirianni and the bye week. As they entered the bye week, he had assignments for his assistant coaches, projects, he called them. What's one specific area, EJ, that you think this team has room to improve? If you had to pick one specific area, where do you want them to get better?
Yeah, I think the second half scoring is going to be the thing. I mean, some of this is a little bit of like noise, like the second quarter scoring. I don't think there's like a number one reason why they're scoring most of their points in the second quarter and struggling in the second half. Some of those drives could happen in the third quarter, the fourth quarter, moving forward. It wouldn't surprise me, but I do think that there's something happening in the second half of games right now, and I think it's probably a couple of different things. Maybe it's a little bit the defensive coordinators are a little bit less predictable. Down 14, they're like, let's just start throwing stuff against the wall and see what happens. And whether it's just letting your foot off the gas, trying to rely on run plays more often, whatever it might be. I think it encapsulates a lot of different things, and I think that's what I would, if it were me, that's what I would have spent the bye week looking at is how can we get out to quick starts in the second half, really put games away, and then they have the running game to, if they do have a 14-21 point lead going into the fourth quarter, to run the clock out, really affect the game that way. So yeah, I think that the second half scoring is probably the area in which I would say is one thing they're going to have to get better at. Against really good teams, we won't necessarily see them against a really good team in a while, but against really good teams, that's the type of thing that you have to be consistent throughout the game, putting pressure on the defense.
Pressure on the defense, EJ. We're going to flip over to the Eagles side of the defense. They're facing a rookie quarterback today in Kenny Pickett. The Steelers obviously started the season with Mitchell Trubisky. They've transitioned to Kenny Pickett. EJ, I don't think I have to remind you, but these Eagles have enjoyed a lot of success against inexperienced and reserve quarterbacks dating to Jonathan Gannon and Nick Sirianni linking in Philadelphia last season. We saw it last year. We've seen it this year. Trevor Lawrence, Cooper Rush just a few weeks ago. Do you think the defense can wreak havoc today? It's worth noting the Eagles rank first in turnover differential, even after the bye week, week that they were off, with 14 takeaways.
Yeah, I mean, this is an offense that has some explosive receivers. Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson, and Greg Pickens, the rookie. Is it George Pickens or Greg Pickens?
George Pickens, yeah.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so they've got some good receivers, but so far this offense hasn't looked great. I think that their offensive front is, kind of still searching for answers, and I think they're just trying to figure out who they are without Ben Roethlisberger a little bit right now. So yeah, I do think that this can be a big game for the defensive front. I think the Eagles match up okay, on the outside with the cornerbacks against that good receiving core. I'm curious to see what they do with Chase Claypool. He's a big slot receiver. He's like 6'4", 220, 230 pounds. That's the type of guy that I would be a little bit worried about Avonte Maddox covering on money downs. You don't necessarily want to line him up on man coverage against a guy that big. I'm curious if maybe C.J. Gardner-Johnson plays into the equation there. Maybe they drop him down. But yeah, I mean, I do think that this is an offense that's struggling. They don't really take a lot of shots down the field, and they're not very efficient right now. So I do think that the defensive front can affect the game, and I think that, again, that the Eagles secondary matches up well against the Steelers' strength.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about, EJ, but again, one of the bigger signings, I think, or acquisitions rather, James Bradbury, the duo of him and Darius Slay. I mean, they rank first and second in opponent passer rating, been playing very sticky coverage against opposing wide receivers. Here they get a chance at causing some havoc back there in the secondary with Kenny Pickett visiting Philadelphia. EJ, it's time to transition over to injuries. As we know, the bye week is that one week that all teams benefit from to get healthy. They've got it here early on. The offensive line, EJ, in particular, it seemed like all of them were kind of getting through their nicks and bruises over the past couple of weeks. Specifically, Lane Johnson is ready to make his return after missing the second half in their last game against the Cowboys. How do you think the bye week benefited the team in regards to injuries?
Yeah, I mean, usually coming out of the bye, you expect guys to get right. And, the Eagles injury report was pretty much what you would expect coming out of the bye, maybe even a little bit better. Everybody on the active roster is available today. Brandon Graham missed practiced throughout the week with a hamstring bruise. He said he got hit in the hamstring and during the Cowboys game, and he missed practice, but he's ready to go today. Josh Jobe is back, and you're right. The offensive line definitely got a lot healthier. Jordan Mailata with the shoulder injury. Isaac Seumalo is still kind of missing a little bit of time here and there in practice, but he's been playing with that ankle injury, and again, I'm sure getting off his feet for a week certainly helped that. Same thing with Landon Dickerson. He wasn't really I think he might have had rest on Wednesday, but didn't miss practice time this week. So yeah, the offensive line, and like you mentioned, Lane Johnson. He said that he could have been back last week if he needed to be, but we'll never know. It didn't wasn't a was a moot point. But yeah, he'll be back as well. So yeah, I mean the injury circumstances for them are still pretty good. I think it's a big reason why they've been as successful as they have been. They haven't really tested their depth yet. So, and on the other side, the Steelers are still dealing with a lot of injuries, and maybe most importantly, their kicker. Chris Boswell was like a late addition to the injury report on Friday, and he was ruled out on Saturday. The Steelers had to sign a kicker off the street, a guy named Nick Seba. So yeah, that's definitely something to keep in mind that the Steelers kicking operation is going to be kind of inexperienced today.
Especially important, EJ, when it's almost expected that points are going to come at a premium with Kenny Pickett here at quarterback. We've seen his struggles over the past month, and a lot of their points have been generated through special teams. So definitely worth paying attention to. Also, TJ Watt, one of the best defensive players in the league, not playing today. Still coming back from his injury. Again, EJ, everyone on the Eagles' 53-man roster, no game designation. They are healthy. On paper, they are healthy heading into this matchup. Of course, guys are going to, not feel necessarily 100% throughout the season, but on paper, no game designations. This team is healthy. Brandon Graham, though, also worth mentioning, EJ, he was dealing with a hamstring this week. But I'll tell you what, EJ, Brandon Graham, he was so happy when Robert Quinn walked through that locker room. You caught that interaction earlier in the week.
Yeah, and that was one thing Robert Quinn talked about. I mean, as a 12-year veteran, Robert Quinn is. It's probably not every day that you have somebody at your position that's got more experience in the league than you. But Brandon Graham has, got him beat in that regard. And you're right. Yeah, they Brandon Graham gave him a really warm welcome. We were there when Robert Quinn got into the locker room. They didn't even have a name over his locker stall yet. His jersey was kind of the way he'd have to find his way through the locker room. And yeah, Brandon Graham, as always, is all smiles when he sees a new teammate. And Robert Quinn talked about how much that meant to him, having somebody who is the OG in the room, is what he called him, and have that respect and that welcoming. So I mean, the early indication from Robert Quinn is that he seems like a pretty low key guy. He definitely seems like someone who won't have a hard time fitting in, and especially because he said like that's his number one priority. He said this team has been rocking and rolling before I got here. I'm just here to help out. So yeah, I definitely am curious to see how he fits in with the defensive end rotation. But personality wise, it doesn't seem like he's going to have much trouble.
Yeah, I spoke briefly with AJ Brown after Thursday's practice about a different topic, and unsolicitedly, he brought up, man, how about that move to get Robert Quinn? Players are excited that he is in the building, that they get another pass rusher to have those fresh legs in the second half. Like what you said, we'll see how he gets acclimated today in his first game with the Eagles. EJ, it's time to transition over to what you said. As a reminder to everyone back home, you can submit your questions and comments throughout the game, throughout the week at www.inquirer.com/Eagles Game Day. That's where next week, the Eagles got a game on Thursday. We'll have a chance to read your comments and questions during our next show in Houston. The first one, EJ, it comes from Iceman J922F, who says, a bold prediction. The Steelers score 13 of their points this weekend because of Eagles special teams mistakes. EJ, special teams is kind of a hot topic when a team is rolling. You've got to pinpoint and really put under a microscope at what needs to improve. We mentioned the second half scoring earlier, but special teams is certainly an area where this team could improve.
Yeah, it does feel like that's kind of a problem that's been kind of lingering, and it might be something that costs them at some point in a game here. Whether it's punt return problems or kick return problems, block kicks, whatever it might be. They definitely haven't had the tightest special teams units, and even punting, hasn't been great. As far as like the field position aspect of it all. So I do think that that's something that will continue to be, something to keep in mind and keep an eye on throughout the rest of the season. 13 points is a lot of points. I could see 7 points. I could definitely see like a muffed punt costing them, giving the Steelers an extra possession, or maybe a not on the flip side of it, maybe a punt that doesn't go far enough and gives Steelers short field. Maybe a kickoff return that goes long or something like that. Yeah, maybe 7. I think 7's a good bold prediction. 13, that would be catastrophic.
Yeah, and to their credit, we pinpoint the special teams mistakes. They've also got 2 special teams player of the week awards, those accolades. That it felt like the team had such a roll on to begin the season. Obviously, Cameron Dicker, who was released yesterday, had those important points in that Arizona game, and also Zach McPherson recovering that onside kick at the beginning of the year. So they've got some accomplishments throughout the year, but definitely an area where they could improve. Also noting Jake Elliott, their kicker, now that he's back and healthy, he's as sure-footed as any kicker in the league. So they've got some things rolling for them, definitely some things to improve. EJ, our next comment comes from Philly Fever. This is a spicy one. He says, "What a great time to be a Philly fan. The Phillies are on a roll. The Eagles are undefeated, and even the Flyers have gotten off to an unexpectedly decent start. The Eagles will cruise this week. If I were the 1972 Dolphins players, I'd be concerned." EJ, let's start right there at the end. This past Sunday, the Dolphins hosted the Steelers, today's current opponent for the Eagles, and they had a celebration for that 1972 team. Should those guys be concerned? I mean, you look at the remainder schedule. It's obviously one of the easier ones from first glance, but uh, as any of these players like to say, any given Sunday. What are your thoughts on that?
Do I like how he didn't mention the Sixers in there? Let's kind of leave them off to the side. I don't know. 17 wins, especially it'd be the first 17-win season. That's pretty tough. I don't want to pour cold water on it. I always encourage fans like enjoy this. It's an exciting time. I don't want to sit here and be like the wet blanket, but I don't necessarily. I wouldn't say just quite yet that the 72 team should be sweating. There's been a lot of 6-0, 7-0 teams, and if we get to 12 or 13, all right, we could start talking about it. But let's just like what does Jalen Hurts always say? You got to take it one day at a time, 1 week at a time. Make the daily deposits, whatever the cliche is you want to use. Yeah, let's see if they handle the Steelers team and then go on from there.
All right, EJ, we've got one last comment who comes from I. Wendell Paul. This is regarding the Robert Quinn acquisition. He or she says, Howie hits on another. All we need now is a little bit more backup at secondary, possibly another running back, and it's off to the races. If Jalen Hurts stays healthy, that's actually a very important point. Based on this team's easy schedule, they win 14 or 15 games. EJ, let's focus on the earlier point of this commenter who says, they could use a little bit more backup in the secondary and at running back. What's your temperature on that as the trade deadline looms this upcoming Tuesday?
Yeah, I feel like at safety and running back, those are 2 spots that they're an injury away from maybe having someone that you wouldn't necessarily want in a starting role. At running back, it would be Kenny Gainwell or Boston Scott or Trey Sermon. You probably would like to have someone who's a little bit more maybe versatile or couldn't handle the full workload. I do think that's an area that they'll probably explore in the next couple of days. And at safety, Kayvon Wallace is currently the dime safety. When they go 3 safeties, he's on the field. Kayvon just hasn't played a lot of football. I don't know if I would want him, being on the back end against a team like the 49ers or, there's not a lot of good teams in the NFC, but, whoever figures it out by the end of the year, you don't necessarily want him on the back end. I guess the Vikings is another team you could throw in there. So yeah, I mean, maybe a veteran at safety, someone who knows the scheme, maybe a running back who can make an impact on third downs, whether it's protecting or catching the ball to the backfield. But I think running back's the big one for me. I was looking at Miles Sanders' touches last week, and he's been getting a lot of work. And he's someone who has struggled with injuries in the past. I think again, it's like with the edge rushers, you just want these guys fresh by the end of the year. You don't want Miles Sanders getting 300 touches in the regular season and being gassed by the playoffs, and that's if he stays healthy. So. Yeah, I think you have to look at those positions where one injury could put you in a position you don't want to be in. And yeah, I'd say it's safety and running back are the 2 that stand out in my mind.
We've discussed the defense plenty throughout the show. There you go. The name dropping Miles Sanders. He gets an opportunity today to host his hometown team, the Pittsburgh Steelers. I've got a story up at Inquirer.com, wrote on Miles just a few days ago about how he's kind of playing uh, the best stretch of his career, really, here, EJ, as he welcomes in his hometown team in the Steelers. EJ, let's get to some final thoughts from veteran Eagles beat writer Jeff McLean.
Hi, I'm Jeff McLean of the Philadelphia Inquirer. Thanks for joining us here at Game Day Central. The Eagles are facing the Steelers, obviously, this week. They're coming off a bye, and they're 6-0. Last year, Nick Sirianni and the Eagles didn't have a bye until December. This one comes in October. So it's at an earlier time, and probably one I think that's more beneficial to this team, being that they're undefeated and they've had some injuries. It looks like Lane Johnson is going to be ready to play. It looks like Brandon Graham's going to be able to play. And it even looks like the guy they just traded for, Robert Quinn, is going to play at defensive end. Maybe not as much as he has with the Chicago Bears, but probably around 20 to 30 snaps. Looking at this game, the Eagles are pretty much big favorites, and you can understand why looking at the Steelers. They're really struggling this year post Ben Roethlisberger. They've already benched quarterback Mitch Trubisky. They've already put in rookie quarterback Kenny Pickett. He has had some struggles. He's had 7 interceptions in about half the time, in terms of half the amount of time the Steelers have played. And I think that really plays in having a rookie at quarterback really plays into the Eagles defense's hands. They have a fierce pass rush, as we know, and getting Quinn should only make them better and should give them opportunities to really attack a quarterback that has had trouble with turnovers. That offense not only has struggled to throw the ball through the air, they've really struggled on the ground. Najee Harris hasn't been able to gain much on the ground. He's averaging only 3.3 yards a carry. And a lot of that has to do with the offensive line. They still have some talent on that side of the ball. They always have wide receivers. They have a young one in George Pickens who could give the Eagles secondary some fits. But I think overall, on that side of the ball, it really favors the Eagles defense. On the other side of the ball, the Steelers still have a formidable defense. I mean, they've kept their team in a number of games. They've really only been blown out by the Buffalo Bills, arguably the best team in the NFL. So it's not like the Eagles are going to be overlooking the Steelers. It's not like the Steelers have no chance of beating this team. We all know the adage, any given Sunday can ring true on any week. Cameron Hayward is still in the middle of that defense. He's a run-stopping force, and if he and that defense is able to kind of keep Miles Sanders and Jalen Hurts in the run game in check, that makes it much more harder for this offense. They still have a good safety in Minkah Fitzpatrick, one of the top guys really in the NFL. So it's not like you're going to see the Eagles take advantage all the way down the field. Although really in the last few weeks they haven't been as explosive throwing the ball down the field. So I think they're going to try and move that needle. I also think that they're also going to target tight end Dallas Goedert more. He's done well, but if you look at his numbers, they probably should be a little higher in terms of targets than they've been so far. That being said, the one thing that really worries me about the Eagles right now is the way that they've handled the blitz. Jalen Hurts has had some successes, but that's something that we've seen opposing defensive coordinators call more often against this offense. And really, with a team like the Steelers at 2-5, they may just throw the entire book at the Eagles and try and pressure Hurts into making mistakes. Now, he hasn't made many mistakes this year. He's arguably one of the MVP candidates in the NFL because he hasn't made many of those. But they're going to challenge him. The Cowboys did 2 weeks ago. Dan Quinn blitzed more than he ever has. The week before that against the Cardinals, Van Joseph, who likes to blitzed him half the time. And they had some struggles. And some of that has to do with the offensive lines. Some of that has to do with the running backs who have to pick up those blitzes. And some of that has to do with Jalen Hurts and his receivers and them being on the right page. But I think a lot of it has to do with the coaching staff. I mean, they have to give Jalen Hurts the right answers when those blitzes are coming at you, when those cover zero blitzes are coming. And there are hot reads that he has to make. He needs to have enough answers when those blitzes are coming. So that's the one area I think I'd be a little concerned about with the Eagles and why an upset could potentially happen. But I still think this is a game in which the Eagles should win handily. If we're comparing this team to 2017 team, and I don't think they're as talented as that team, but if we are, this is around the time that the Eagles in 2017 started kind of blowing away teams, and I think there's a potential for that here because you're facing some teams that are struggling. You're facing the 2-5 Steelers. Next week, you're facing a Houston Texans squad that isn't very good. The week after that, you have the Commanders that are kind of a mess. And this, I think, could be one of those games. That's why I'm picking a pretty comfortable victory for the Eagles, 30-16. And that would move them to 7-0 ahead of a quick turnaround the following week against the Houston Texans. Obviously, we'll talk about that next week. But coming off a bye, I think the Eagles stay 7-0 and keep this run going. That's it here from Jeff McClain of the Philadelphia Inquirer. Now back to you at Game Day Central.
Jeff with his insight and expertise on this game. EJ, it is time for predictions. As always, who is your player to watch out for today?
Yeah, give me Hassan Reddick. I mean, I think that the Robert Quinn edition is obviously going to, have people buzzing and people are going to want to see him on the field. But I think that the Steelers defensive line or the Eagles defensive line can take advantage of the Steelers front. And, I think that Hassan Reddick is still going to be the kind of, Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat are still going to be at the forefront of that rush. Against an inexperienced quarterback, give me Hassan Reddick having a big game. I picked 21-10 in the score. I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself here, but I picked the Eagles to win 21-10. I don't really see the Steelers having an explosive offensive day. I could see a little bit of a lull from the Eagles, maybe coming off of the bye week and maybe looking ahead to the short week that looms ahead. But even still, they just have such a talent advantage. And I do think that the defense can kind of keep the Steelers in check.
Yeah, A.J. Brown did kind of warn us the first time that we met with players on Wednesday that this is still historically a Mike Tomlin-led team. Again, Mike Tomlin has never finished with a losing record throughout the regular season and over his 15 seasons with the Steelers. Quite impressive, but a majority of that run has been with Ben Roethlisberger, who, again, is no longer here. He's rolling with Kenny Pickett today. My player to watch out for, give me Dallas Goedert, EJ. Dallas seems to always have a big game. I think his over-under in yardage was set in the high 40s. For Dallas, that's almost like 2 catches, and the yards after the catch himself can pick that up. We know the Eagles love to run those screens to him and get him rolling down there downfield. Give me Dallas Goedert. I think you read your prediction, right, EJ? What'd you say you put in today's edition of the Philadelphia Inquirer?
Yeah, I had it 21-10. One thing, you mentioned Mike Tomlin a second ago. I think one thing that we didn't really touch on that I did mention in my prediction is I think this is going to be a really interesting, an interesting display for how the Steelers. Mike Tomlin's a really good coach. How he sort of game plans against Jalen Hurts, what he thinks will work against Jalen Hurts. There's going to be a lot of games here against some bad teams, and you might not be able to glean that much information about what the Eagles will look like come December, come January. But this will be, an interesting test to see what that scheme looks like and what answers Jalen has for it. Obviously the talent usually wins out. Scheme can only compensate for so much. I think the Eagles will still have success offensively, but it will be interesting to see at least what the Steelers are, what they think that they can get Jalen with. But yeah, getting back to my prediction, 21-10 Eagles. I think that they, will take care of business, maybe get off to a slow start, maybe not a super high scoring game, but I think they'll do what it takes to win today. And yeah, going to Houston, remaining undefeated.
It wasn't necessarily planned, EJ, but I think Jeff and I had the exact same score in today's paper. I think I put 30-13 in favor of the Eagles. Now that they're missing their starting kicker, the Steelers are. I might, it's really tough just seeing Kenny Pickett drive downfield. I know he's had a lot of success in college. The NFL has proven to be a much different beast for him. I think him and Mac Jones are tied or first and second in regards to turnover ratio per pass. I think it's almost every 6 or 7 passes for Kenny Pickett he has thrown an interception. against this feisty Eagles defense. They lead the turnover and takeaways even after a week off, expecting a big day for them. Any other predictions, EJ? Players to watch out for? I know you said Hassan Reddick. Give me one guy on offense to look out for before we close out.
Give me Miles Sanders against his hometown
There you
team. I
go.
think this could be a big game. It might be a second half with a lot of runs. Yeah, I'll take Miles Sanders with the big game on offense.
And there we have it. Hassan Reddick, Miles Sanders, Dallas Goedert. Those are your three players to watch out for myself and EJ Smith. EJ, it is time to wrap up. We are finally back in action off the bye week. I want to thank everyone for tuning in to Inquire Live at Game Day Central. Make sure you stick around at inquire.com/Eagles Game Day to follow along with all of us, myself, EJ, Jeff McClain, Mike Sealski. We are all here on site ready to cover today's game, continue the conversation over there at Game Day Central. Who knows, our very next show coming up here this Thursday, it's going to be a quick turnaround for us and the team down in Houston. We'll have a chance to read your comments again during our next show. Also, keep tabs on Inquirer.com. EJ's got something cooking up nice this week, and it's not barbecue as we head down south. He's got a nice story that he's got planned later in this week. Won't give too much on that. Again, a very big week here coming up. For EJ Smith, I am Josh Tolentino. Thank you so much for tuning in to Inquire Live at Game Day Central. We will see you in Houston.
See you guys later.